Hello and welcome to Carrie's DIY. This is my first video, so please bear with me. I am making some notepads for my girls so that they can have their own custom notepads. And I started off with a couple of papers, some things that I made in Word. I just did the underline function on blank text, and then added some butterflies to one, some flowers to another. I found some rainbows and some hearts, and that's all that's in there, just multiple copies of each. And I did 40 pages for each, which ended up a little bit thicker than your regular legal pad. So if you are using the same 20-pound paper, I would suggest going maybe 30 if you wanted them to be the same thickness as a standard legal pad. On top of that, you're going to need some cardstock to be the back of each one. I have a full sheet for one of them, but for the other I only have a third sheet, and I'm just fine with that because these are just going to get tucked into a pad folio, so she doesn't need the entire sheet of cardstock. I'm going to be making both of these together. So I'm just going to go ahead and layer all of that on top of each other, except I do need a piece of scrap paper in between the two on top of each pad, so that if I do get glue in there, do mess up cutting things, then I've just drawn a piece of scrap paper instead of the rest of the pad. Once again, layer it, put some scrap paper on top, and then you need to make sure everything is totally squared up. I had to take the pad off the back for this. Got it totally squared up and then added the pad to the back. Once that's squared up, you're going to take some clamps. I showed 4. You need the 2 small ones to start off with. I preferred that little 1-inch spring clamp. It worked great, much better than the C-clamp. And these 2 you're just going to keep on there while you're getting things set up for your more permanent clamp that's going to hold everything while it's gluing. I did end up leaving a small mark in the pad because I left that C-clamp on while everything dried, but that's up to you if you want to leave the little mark in the thing. Next, take the 2 boards you'll be clamping these between and cover the surface with a little bit of tape. This is, I think it's Scotch tape, I'm forgetting the name, but you can use it for, you can use painter's tape. If you really want, you could try, it's masking tape, that's the word. This is masking tape. You could use Scotch tape, but I preferred masking tape. It comes off really easy when you're done. And this is just to make sure that your notepad does not get stuck to the board. I don't care if I ruin the board, but I would care if I couldn't get the notepad off of the board. I'm also going to take a piece and stick it to the back of that cardstock. So the sticky side is up right now, and I'm going to stick it all along the back, and later you'll see why I want that piece there, but for now we're just going to stick that on there, and then we're going to get our bottom boards, get those where we're going to want to clamp everything, and then find another piece of masking tape and stick that. Make sure on your boards you cover over the corner too, not just the top surface, so fold that over a little bit just to cover the corner, and hopefully you'll avoid having anything stuck to the boards. If it sticks to anything, it'll stick to the masking tape and it will be easy to just cut off. But if it sticks to the boards, you might be tearing paper, separating things. Alright, once you get all that, you're going to line this up. I'm sorry you can't see it very well in the video, but you are going to line up your paper pads so that they are not quite flush with the edge of the board. And I will show you in just a minute. You're going to you want a little bit of thickness of glue between the end of your pad and your boards. So once you get all of that all lined up, you're going to clamp everything down with your bigger clamps. Clamp everything nice and tight and totally secure. And once I've got all of my things clamped, I will show you this little gap that I'm hoping that you can create. So here's a better view of what I'm doing. I've got one clamp on, getting the other clamp, and then I'm just making it really tight. Alright, so here's my gap. You can see it's probably about the end of my fingernail fits into that space between the edge of my paper and the edge of my boards. And we're going to fill that little space with glue. And you noticed I pointed out the tape goes clear past, so that if I do get any glue over the edges, we'll be good. This is shoe glue. They recommended silicone, but my shoe glue, whatever that is, the tube burst this morning. So we are using that since it's pretty much going to be trash, and I think it's going to work great. It's a little bit more expensive than silicone, but I'm going to have to throw away that tube anyway. So we're going to take some of that and carefully spread it along the end of my notepad. Just go ahead and cover that whole thing. Make sure you have enough to fill in the gap that you've got spaced between your paper and your boards. And if you get a little bit too much that's extra, that's just fine, because that's why we have that tape going a little bit further past. And just keep filling that little channel that we created. And here you can see a horrible video of me covering the paper with glue. Once I've done that, I'm going to fold that piece of tape that we have taped to the back of the notepad. I'm going to fold that up and tape it to the board. Take my popsicle stick and smooth everything over. Just push it right up against those boards and squeegee the glue out to the ends. I probably didn't have quite enough glue in here because in the end my thing wasn't totally smooth, but it definitely worked. Now you're going to let that sit and dry for the amount of time. If it's silicone, a day. If this glue said about a day, but I only left it for 3 hours. And I'm kind of glad I did, because it made taking this apart easier. Once it's dry, go ahead and take your clamps off, and you're going to take your bottom boards out first, because your notepads are taped to the top board right now. So go ahead and slide those bottom boards out of your way and get everything laid down flat. I propped up my paper with my roll of tape to make it level with the clamps. So I'm going to slide this roll of tape out from underneath here and lay everything down. Once I've got that, I can kind of turn this up and just peel this tape off. And it comes off nice and smooth, except for a little spot where some glue did get into there. But that's why I was happy it was a little wet still, because it came right off. And then I pulled the tape and the glue off of the bottom of the board, and you can see right here that it did pull the tape up a little bit, which is exactly why we had that tape on there. Alright, now I've got this extra tape. I'm just going to take an X-Acto knife and go ahead and carefully cut right along the paper. This is why we have scrap paper on the top, just in case I mess up. I cut that scrap paper instead of the actual notebook. So just trim all the tape off, get all the little pieces of extra stuff out of your way. And there's thickness of glue, just a little extra glue over the edge to make sure everything holds nice. And that's why we had the papers set in a little bit. Just cutting off the extra tape right there. And then once you've done that, you're almost done. Just one more thing. If you've chosen to do 2 notebooks at once, you are going to go ahead and find where those separate from each other, split them apart, open it up wide. Make sure you've got your cardstock going with the right notebook. So I've got a piece of cardstock for each notebook, lay them out flat and just cut them apart. Be very careful to not cut through the glue that you need stuck to the papers. Just cut right in the middle, right between them, and voila, you've got 2 beautiful notebooks. And this is my finished edge right there. It's a little bumpy, but it totally does the job. I'm really actually pretty happy with it. It worked out just fine. And right here, here's my first page. I love peeling these pages off. It folds up nice and it sticks. It pulls. It's great. It worked out perfectly. And right here you can see this tiny little circle. That is from leaving that clamp on that whole time. And these are the pad folios they're going in. This is why I was just fine with just that 3rd sheet of cardstock. It actually makes it easier to get this in once I open up the pad folio. I don't have to slide the whole thing down in, but it slid down in, and I'll let my child take off that first paper. It's so satisfying to pull those off. I'll let her do it. There's pad folio 1, and here is my other notepad. going into the other one. And that, my friends, is our finished product. I am so excited to give this to my little girls. They're gonna love it. Thank you for watching.